Assalamu alaikum. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful. All holy praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful, who came in the divine person of Master Farad Muhammad. And in the name of his last apostle, most honorable Elijah Muhammad, I would like to greet my brothers and sisters in the nations, greetings of peace and paradise of Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for taking your time to be with us for this Wednesday evening class. Your presence is a testimony that you value truth and desire to grow in knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Tonight, our subject comes from the Message to the Black Man in America, page 34, Understanding Self. This is not merely another lesson. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches that understanding self is our salvation. It is the foundation upon which every aspect of our growth is built. Without the knowledge of self, we cannot truly know God, our purpose, our duty in this life. As we gather together tonight, let us remember that these classes are dedicated to studying the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. We strive to remain faithful to what he has taught because his words contain life, light, and guidance for a people who have been mentally and spiritually dead. The messenger teaches only what Allah revealed to him. Therefore, we approach these teachings with humility, sincerity, and the willingness to be transformed. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches that knowledge of self is far more than simply knowing our name, our family, our personal history. He explains that knowledge of self means knowing our own kind, knowing the enemy made opposite of us, and knowing that this is the time of the great separation, and knowing that Allah has appeared in the person of Master Farad Muhammad. These are the realities that awaken us from the sleep of ignorance and unite us into the great unity that Allah desires for his people. Understanding self means understanding our divine assignment. It means seeing ourselves as Allah intended us to be, not merely according to the experiences of this world, but according to the original nature which he created us. Although we were born with the original nature, centuries of oppression, false education, and an environment designed to mislead us has pulled many of us away from our true selves. The messenger has come to restore what was lost. Our journey back to ourselves is not an easy one, brothers and sisters. It is a path that requires patience, discipline, sacrifice, and an unwavering faith. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches that we have a great distance to travel in returning to our true self. Along that journey, we will encounter trials, oppositions, and every effort to discourage us. Yet, if we truly desire the knowledge of ourselves, no obstacle can prevent us from attaining that knowledge. Once truth enters into our hearts, it gives us the strength to endure whatever comes our way. The messenger also teaches that Allah has given us his mind as well. That great gift comes great responsibility. We are not gathered simply to accumulate information. We're here to be transformed by truth, to apply these teachings in our daily lives, and then help raise our people from the condition in which we found them. Every believer has a role in the resurrection. Every one of us has a responsibility to contribute to the upliftment of our people according to the measure Allah has blessed us with. So tonight, I encourage each of you to keep an open heart and an open mind. Listen carefully to the words of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Reflect honestly upon yourself. Allow the teachings to challenge you, strengthen you, and guide you. Because the messenger's teachings come from a place of love, love for Allah, love for our people, and love for each of us individually. And as we gain a greater understanding of ourselves, we also become more capable of loving one another and serving one another and building a righteous society that Allah intends for us to build. With that spirit, let us turn our attention to the subject for this evening, understand self, and I will begin reading from the Message to the Black Man in America, page 34. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad opens up this chapter by drawing our attention to something very important. He says, there are some efforts to celebrate a so-called Negro History Week, and some of my people will participate. The planning of that week to teach the slave a knowledge of his past is not complete, sufficient, or comprehensive enough to enable my people to learn the true knowledge of themselves. It is important that my people learn the true knowledge of self, as it means their salvation. So brothers and sisters, notice where the messenger begins. He is not condemning the desire to learn history. He is teaching us that learning history is not enough if it does not lead us to the truth of ourselves. And notice exactly what he says that week is attempting. He does not say it teaches us nothing. He says its planning is to teach the slave a knowledge of his path. Now, listen to these words. He calls us the slave, not the citizen, not the free man, the slave, because that is still the condition of who does not know himself. And he says what they're offering the slave is a knowledge of his past, not his self. Brothers and sisters, a man's past and a man's self is not the same thing. Your past is what happened to you. Yourself is what you are. You can memorize everything that was done to you and still not know one thing about who you were before it was done. Think that over. That is the whole difference the messenger is drawing our attention to. And it is why he says the effort is not complete, not sufficient, and not comprehensive enough. They're trying, but it's not complete. Those are very powerful words. Why? Because an incomplete education produces an incomplete people. You gotta have a complete knowledge. This is what you get when you come by these teachers of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So if we were only known of what happened to us, but never learned who we were before it happened, then we still remain mentally enslaved. Think that over. I always say this. A history that begins with slavery can never fully explain who we are because our existence did not begin in slavery. Our understanding of ourselves starts with bondage, then our identity will always be limited by that bondage. So the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad is going over that knowledge that they're trying to give us is not sufficient. So then the messenger makes one of the strongest statements in this chapter. He says that the true knowledge of self means our salvation. Think that over. That's his definition of a true knowledge of self. Salvation. Now let us understand what salvation means. Salvation means saving or being saved from danger, evil, difficulty, destruction. It means rescue. It means deliverance. And hear this part carefully because it is the part that changes everything. Salvation is also the agent or the means that brings about the deliverance. Now let's sit with that for a second, brothers and sisters. Salvation is not only what you saved into, salvation is also the very thing that does the saving. This is why the messenger can say the knowledge of self means our salvation. He is not saying the knowledge of self leads to salvation somewhere down the road. He is saying the knowledge of self is the rescue. The moment it enters you, the savings have begun. Think that over. And understand what we're being saved from. That's the key too. Because this is not what the church has taught. taught us. This is not about escaping punishment after you're dead and buried. There is no life beyond the grave, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us. Heaven is received here while you live in this life on this earth. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches that our people have been mentally dead through centuries of slavery, false education, and deception. That is the death he came to raise us from. That is the grave he is opening. Our salvation begins when we receive the knowledge that awaken us from that mental death, That's when our salvation begins. So before we can change our condition, we first have to know. That's why this subject is titled, Understand Self. Think about it. A person who has forgotten their name, forgotten their family, forgotten their purpose, and forgotten their creator cannot truly live the life that God intended for them to live. They may be physically alive, but mentally and spiritually they are lost. Walking, working, paying bills, but dead the whole time, mentally. This is why the messenger says knowledge of self means our salvation. Without it, there can be no true freedom. Because when you know yourself, you begin to know your value. When you know your value, you stop accepting conditions that are beneath your divine nature. And when you know your origin, you begin to understand your purpose. And when you understand your purpose, you can fulfill the mission that Allah has placed before you and I. Think that over. This is why the messenger starts here. Before we can build businesses, families, communities, or nations, we must first rebuild our mind. Salvation begins in the mind because the resurrection begins in the mind. As we said a few weeks ago, quoting from the messenger, he said slums exist. Why? Because slums exist in the minds of the people. You get slums out the minds and put heaven in, then heaven will exist. So the first lesson of understand self is this. The greatest thing Allah gave us through his messenger, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, is the knowledge that restores us back to ourselves. That restoration is the salvation, brothers and sisters. It's a blessing that we are here to receive this information that was hidden for thousands of years that people take for granted and don't understand the power that's already in their hand. All they have to do is practice it. So the messenger says in the next paragraph, we are not Negroes because God, whose proper name is Allah, has taught us who we are. The messenger says we're not colored people because God has taught me, the messenger, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who the colored people are. He says the American Negro is without a knowledge of self. You are a so-called Negro because you're not a Negro. Now, brothers and sisters, let's think that over because the messenger immediately shifts our attention from the knowledge of history to the knowledge of our identity. Notice that he does not say, I think we're not Negroes. He knows the truth. He says that Allah has taught us who we are, our identity. Once Allah teaches you something, then it's not based upon man's opinion, government classifications, or social customs. It is based upon the knowledge revealed by Allah himself. And look closely at how he says it because he changes one word. He says, God has taught us who we are. Then he says, God has taught me, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who the colored people are. Us. Then me. Think those over. That's not, he chooses his words wisely. Allah taught the whole of us our identity because that knowledge belongs to us and every one of us is entitled to it. Your birthright. That's why we say in a nation, we say reclaim your own. This just belongs to you. All yours. But the identity of the colored man, who he is, where he came from, and what he was made for, that Allah delivered to his messenger, That is a knowledge you will not get from a book, a professor, or a history week. It came down through one man, and he is the one telling you, Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Now, then the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad explains the very word that hang on us. He says, you are a so-called Negro because you're not a Negro. That is the definition of so-called. So-called means called that, but not that. But he uses that name. So every time we say so-called Negro, we're testifying that the name is a lie in the same breath that we speak it. So when Allah comes, the first thing he does is restore us back to our identity. Student enrollment, first question and answer. Who is the original man? Restoring us back to our identity. The original man is the Asiatic black man, the maker, the owner, the cream of the planet Earth, God of the universe. Right back to our identity. So the messenger says we're not Negroes. So today, the same practice continues. See, this text was written in the 60s. They was calling black people Negroes and colored. But the same practice today continues. Nothing is different. Society may not call us Negroes anymore, but other labels have taken its place. Today, many identify themselves as what? African Americans. Others answer to people of color, to minority, to urban, or still identify themselves by street names. Flea, Savage, Beast, gang names, nicknames, or degrading titles. Same scenario. And ask yourself this, why does the name keep changing? Colored, then Negro, then African American, then person of color? A name that fits does not need to be replaced every 20 years or so. Only a name that was never ours has to keep being exchanged. The label changes. The one holding the pen never does. Think that over. The label may change, but the principles remain the same. When another people identify you, they also shape how you see yourself. That's why our lessons is so valuable. These teachings is so valuable because it shapes our identity and how we see ourselves. But when you come into the teachings, you sharp. Look at you sharp. Posture straight. You around men that stand upright. Clean. Think clean. Eat clean. Soldier starts to identify you. So the messenger is teaching us that our identity must not come from those who have ruled over us. Our identity must come from Allah who loves us. The identity got to come from the person that loves you. Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad loves us. Allah loves us. Then the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad says something that causes us to think even deeper. He says, we're not colored people because God has taught me, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who the colored people are. Now, let us examine the word colored, because these words are so simple but have so much definition and meaning behind them. So if you don't understand the word in its totality, then you won't understand the concept and they can still trick you. So when we go over these words, we have to get the context. So to color something means to alter it from its original state. It means something that has been changed, modified, or made different from what it originally was. By its very definition, something that is colored is not the original. Color has been added to it, or it has been changed from its original condition. The original itself cannot be called colored because the original is the standard from which everything else is measured. So put the question to yourself honestly, between a people who have never been changed and a people who were made, grafted, and brought out from another, which one deserves the name colored? Not us. And the messenger teaches us in our lessons, who is the colored man? And the Supreme Wisdoms puts that question to every believer and gives you the answer. He says, who is the colored man? The colored man is the Caucasian white man, or Yakub's grafted devil, the skunk of the planet Earth. Brothers and sisters, this is new knowledge. They didn't know this before. Now people take it as a folly, like it's some type of game that the God came 9,000 miles to play. And many people play with Islam, so they make nothing of it. So they took their own condition, the Caucasian, and made it our name. And once you make something your name, what happens? It becomes your identity. We no longer original. Because they are the ones who are colored, changed out of the original. And they turned around and hung that word on us. And for 400 years, we answered to it. This is why the messenger rejects that title. Allah teaches him who the original people are and who the colored people are. The purpose of this lesson is to teach us to stop accepting identities that contradict the knowledge Allah has revealed to the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Stop accepting these identities that contradict the knowledge that Allah revealed to the Most Honorable. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad does not leave us guessing about what to do with the name. He says it plainly in the same chapter. Allah has taught me, and today I do not fear to tell you, that you can discard that name Negro. We're not Negroes. We're not colored. Those are some of the main things we should remember. So when you see the name Negro, colored, you can just reverse that. What are you calling yourself today in the streets? That's not you. You the Asiatic black man. You a God. The messenger's teachings makes gods out of men, as the Bible does. Makes gods when you truly understand it. So whatever word the people go by, because I don't go by them words. We got a divine attribute. We don't go by those words. We know who we are because we're in the nation of Islam. So we have to remember, don't go by names that's not you, because it shapes your identity. That's what we're getting at. So the messenger also tells us what he was given in its place. He says, Allah has given me our proper name. The people from whom we were taken and brought here to the shores of North America and the history of our forefathers. Our proper names, our people, our history, all three were taken and all three were returned through Allah. So we got to understand, brothers and sisters, names are never insignificant. Names are very important. Throughout scriptures, names identify nature, purpose, and mission. A name carries meaning. It identifies who you are and what you represent. And the Bible teaches in Proverbs 22:1, a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches. Think that over. So the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad repeatedly teaches the importance of having a good name, because a righteous name connects us with our true identity and our divine purpose. A slave name represents ownership by another people, while the restoration of our identity represents the beginning of our freedom. So this is one of the reasons that in the Nation of Islam, a believer first receives the X. The X symbolizes the unknown. Just as in mathematics, the letter X represents an unknown quantity waiting to be discovered. The X reminds us that our original family name was taken from us during slavery. Until our true identity is restored, we refuse to continue glorifying the identity that was imposed on us by our enemy. And understand what that X really is. It is not a name. It is an honest statement of a fact. It says, what I was called is not mine, and what is mine has not yet been returned. A man wearing an X is telling the truth about his condition. A man wearing a slave master's surname is telling a lie about his. Think that over. And as we grow in the teachings, strive to live a righteous life and manifest the qualities Allah desires, Our holy name reflects an attribute of righteousness and our commitment to the new life. So that's when we figure out who we are and we get a name. So the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad was given a name, and he said he didn't want to, find himself doing Allah's job, but if he gave you a name, Allah will accept it. So names is very important. Names create identity. Who you are shapes your vision, your purpose, and we can't take those lightly. So today our people often, the messengers teaches us, accept names that diminish us. We hear ourselves called by names that represents ignorance, violence, weakness, or degradation. And the messenger already told us where those names came from. He says, and I'm quoting, they have called us by their names and their nicknames used among themselves. The filthiest word he used behind closed doors, we have taken up and called it our name as a endearment of infection. Many have been comfortable repeating labels that lower their own value without realizing the words shape your thinking, and your thinking shapes your behavior. Think that over. That's why nobody takes on the name Judas, right? Judas is a good name. Look up the name Judas. It's a beautiful name. But what he did to that name was so degrading and so terrible that nobody would take on that name. Like Yaqub. Yaqub is a good name as well. But what he did, you want to name your child Yaqub or Judas, but look at those names. Those names are good names. What the messenger is teaching us is to reject every false identity that separates us from the knowledge of ourselves. Because we are not what the world calls us, and we are not merely the labels placed upon us by governments, because they give us our name. Because what they ask you, what's your government name? I say, my name is Jason Fareed. No, what's your government name? Elijah Muhammad. No, what's your government name? They want to give you that title back. Those are labels placed upon us. We got to reject those labels. History books or society, whatever they write. If it ain't written by your and a person that has a knowledge of himself pen, reject it. And if it ain't come from the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, reject it. You got to stay closely to his teaching. So the messenger teaches that we are the original man and woman whose true identity comes from Allah and not from those who enslaved us. So the lesson in the paragraph is clear. The resurrection begins by rejecting false names and accepting the identity that Allah has revealed to us. And until we know who we are, we cannot fully become who we are created to be. There's so much in this chapter. Everything that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad writes is scripture. So we got to go over them constantly, like you read Bible and Quran. So the messenger says we must become aware of the knowledge of self and the time in which we are living. We must know these things whether you agree that Elijah Muhammad is on time or out of time. If what the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad says is out of season, it goes for nothing. If what the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad says is on time or in season, then all that he says will bear fruit. Think that over. This is what the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad just said. So the messenger begins that paragraph with what? We must become aware. Now, let us define the word aware, because when I looked that word, I'm like, so we must become aware. So when certain words hit me, I look them up, because you don't really fully understand a word until you get to its meaning. That's what I've come to learn. So to be aware means to know that something exists or to have knowledge or experience of a particular thing. It also means to have a special interest in something and to understand what is happening concerning that subject in the present time. It's a lot. That one little word encompasses that definition. Big definitions. And look at where the word itself comes from. Aware comes from an old root meaning watchful, on guard, wary. It is the same root that gives us the word beware. So to be aware is to be on watch, which means the man who is not aware is not simply uninformed, he is unguarded. He is standing out in the open in the middle of the war without no watchman posted. You know how dangerous that is? Ukraine war and you in Russia right now, you out there in the post without nobody watching over you. Drones coming down. The dangerous position to be in. Be in that same position. Not having a knowledge of yourself is that same position. Not understanding self is that same position. So those definitions fit perfectly with what the messenger is teaching us. The first responsibility of every believer is to become aware that Allah has come. That is very important. And not only that he has come, that he has raised the messenger from among us, and that the knowledge of self has been revealed to that one that he raised from among us. Many people today have never heard of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Many have never heard that Allah came in a person of Master Farad Muhammad, to whom praises are due forever. But before they can accept these teachings, they first have to become aware that they even exist and understand. Most of our people are not rejecting this truth. You cannot refuse what you have never been told is available to you. They're not stubborn. They are blinded, exactly as the messenger said the slave master left them. That awareness begins with us. So how do we make our people aware, brothers and sisters, those of us whose eyes are open? Not merely by preaching, that helps. Not merely by teaching, that also helps. But most importantly, by being an example of these teachers. When they see you, they see the message to the black man. When they see you, they see our Savior has arrived. They see how to eat to live 1 and 2. They see it. The messenger says the greatest lesson in leadership is be the example that you want to see. So all of that is good, great. If you teaching it and you living it, you got to be that example. So the messenger teaches us that our lives should bear witness to the truth we profess. Our righteous conduct, our discipline, our cleanliness, our character, our love for one another, our respect for family, our willingness to work, and our moral excellence should make people ask, what is that has transformed him or her? I want to be like them. Sometimes our examples teach louder than our words can ever. So this is what we have to strive to be, doers of the word. The second definition of awareness is equally important. To be aware also means to understand what is happening in a subject at the present time. Look that word up for yourself. Note the definition itself carries the present time inside of it. So when the messenger says we must be aware of the knowledge of self and the time in which we are living, he is not stacking a second requirement on top of the first. He is teaching the word correctly. A man who knows what the black man was 10,000 years ago, but does not know what hour it is today is not aware. He is a historian. The messenger possessed that awareness because Allah taught him in person. He understood the time in which we are living, and he knew that this was not merely another period in history. This was the time of the resurrection, the time of separation, and the time for the black man and woman to rise from a mental death. This is why the messenger says, you must know these things whether you agree that Elijah Muhammad is on time or out of time. Notice that the messenger did not ask for the blind belief. Instead, he points us to the evidence. We have the evidence. He says, in essence, if I'm speaking before the appointed time, then my words will produce nothing. But if I'm speaking in God's appointed season, then the results will bear fruit. And here is exact words. He does not say some of what I say will bear fruit. He says, then all I say will bear fruit. He is putting the whole of his message on the table and inviting you to test every piece of it. He's inviting you to. Because what? Truth always produces fruit. And what it says, a tree is known by the fruit it bears. And what fruit did his work produce? It produced men who stopped destroying themselves and began protecting their families. It produced disciplined women devoted to building righteous homes. It produced businesses, schools, farms, restaurants, newspapers, and communities built upon self-help and self-respect. It produced us, the fruit of Islam, men trained to protect, serve, discipline themselves, and stand as examples of righteous manhood according to the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He took the drunkard and made him a sober man. He took the addict and made him clean. He took the prostitute and made her a lady. He took the criminal and made him a servant of his people. Brothers and sisters, no university in this country can produce that type of fruit. Or never had. They have the buildings, they have the budgets, and many of them have the credentials, PhD, double doctrine, master's degree, bachelor's, and they cannot do what this unlettered man from Georgia did in the ghettos and wilderness of America. And that's exactly what the messenger said would happen if his message was in season. His words bore fruit. So the messenger did not simply tell us to know ourselves. He tells us also to know the time in which we are living, to be aware. So knowledge of self without the knowledge of time can leave us asleep to our responsibilities. But when we understand who we are and recognize the hour in which Allah has raised us, then we begin to live a life with purpose, urgency, and responsibility. This is why these teachings is so relevant. Truth does not have an expiration date. The guidance Allah revealed through his messenger continues to call us to righteousness, discipline, self-improvement, and the resurrection of our people. So the lesson of this paragraph is this: become aware, become conscious, know this truth exists, live it so completely that your life becomes evidence of it, then let the fruit of your example awaken others to the knowledge of themselves. So the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad in the next paragraph says, there is much misunderstanding among us because of our inferior knowledge of self. We have been to schools where they do not teach us the knowledge of self. We have been to schools of our slave masters' children. We have been to their schools and gone as far as they have allowed us to go. That was not far enough for us to learn the knowledge of ourselves. The lack of knowledge of self is one of our main handicaps. It blocks us throughout the world. And if you were the world and you were a part of the world, you would also turn a man down if he did not know who he actually was. If we, the so-called Negroes, or whatever name you call yourself out there, do not know our own selves, how can we be accepted by people who have a knowledge of self? Now think that over for a second, brothers and sisters. In this paragraph, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad identifies one of the greatest obstacles facing our people. He says, there is much misunderstanding among us because our inferior knowledge of self, not the lack of intelligence, because we said there's many people credentialed, not the lack of ability. We see LeBron James jump from the foul line. He says it is an inferior knowledge of self. And let us listen and understand that word carefully, because the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad chose it carefully. Inferior means something that is situated under or beneath. Lower in order, degree, or rank. Inferior is a word about position, not about quality. It does not mean our knowledge is stupid. It means our knowledge of self has been placed underneath. It has been buried, put down at the bottom of the stack, and everything else in the world is piled on top of it. So think about what that means for us. We can name the government's presidents and not name our prophets. I bet you know more presidents than you know prophets. Test yourself. I don't know, not us here, but those people that's listening. We can recite their history and not our own beginning. We know 1,000 things about their world stacked on top of the one thing we know about ours. That is an inferior knowledge of self, not absent. It's just buried. You got to come by these teachings. It's on our website, the nation's website, www.templeofislam.com. All the information is there, free of charge, so you can come from under the rubbish. So what that means is we've been taught many things, but we have not been taught the most important things, and that is ourselves and understand self. This is why the messenger explains we have been to schools where they do not teach us the knowledge of ourselves. That is the root of the problem. Because brothers and sisters, education is one of the most powerful forces in shaping a nation. Every nation educates its children according to the future it desires for them. Schools are training ground. They prepare to think, solve problems, build institutions, preserve culture, and carry the nation forward. Show me what a nation teaches its children, and I will show you what that nation intends to become. Look how important it is. In our nationhood leadership diagram, you have the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad first picture, and under the messenger, you have the Muhammad's Mosque. I'm looking at it. So over to the right of it, you have training. Schools are training grounds. Under training, you have University of Islam and proposed educational centers. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad knew how important that training ground. This is what the messenger says in the next part. We have been to schools of our slave masters' children, but their children are running the schoolhouses. Their children write the textbooks. The children set the curriculum, hire the teachers, and decide what our babies will be told about themselves at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. The overseer changed clothes, but he did not leave. And look at the tense the messenger uses next. He says, we have been to their schools and gone as far as they have allowed us to go. Have allowed, not allowed, have allowed. He is describing something still in effect, still being administered, still granting permission this very day. He is showing us that our education had limits and that somebody is setting them. We learn many subjects, but we are never taught who we really are. We learn history without learning our own beginning. We learn government without learning self-government. We learn economics without learning how to build for ourselves. We learn science without learning our divine purpose. We were permitted to learn enough to function in somebody else's society, but not enough to build our own society. And that is by design. And the messenger tells us elsewhere exactly why the slave master will never hand us this. The slave master will not teach you the knowledge of yourself, as there would not be a master-slave relationship any longer. He is not withholding it because he forgot. He is withholding it because the day we get it, his position is finished. So the messenger then calls this lack of knowledge one of our main handicaps. Now, we about to close, brothers and sisters, but this is very important. What is a handicap? A handicap is a disadvantage that holds a person back from reaching his or her full potential. It is like carrying unnecessary weight while trying to run a race. Even though you have the strength and ability, that extra weight slows your progress. And brothers and sisters, understand how a handicap race is run. The weight does not go on the slow horse. The weight goes on the best horse. Think that over. The officials look at the field. They find the animal who will win if the race will run straight, and they load him down so that the others have a chance to the finish line. You don't put a weight on a horse you are not afraid of. You put a weight on a horse, you know that's going to win if he ain't had that weight. That's the handicap. So the messenger is teaching that the ignorance of self is that weight. Not our color, not our nature, not our capacity. The weight is the one thing we were never allowed to learn. Without the knowledge of self, our people struggle to unite, struggle to build, struggle to lead, and struggle to believe in their own greatness. This is why he says it blocks us throughout the world. Think about that statement that the messenger says. It blocks us throughout the world. A people who do not know themselves cannot fully offer themselves. A nation that does not understand its own purpose cannot fulfill its mission. When we lack the knowledge of self, we have little to offer the world because we have not yet developed what Allah has placed within each and every one of us, if you black. And now the messenger does something we must not rush past. He does not ask us to be angry at the world for turning us away. He asks us to sit in the world's chair and render the verdict ourselves. Responsibility. But the messenger said in the Theology of Time, he says, I would drop you too. If I give you so much aid, I'm going to drop you. It's just wisdom. I can't carry you. So the messenger says, if you were the world and you were a part of the world, you would also turn a man down if he did not know who he actually was. If a man came to your door and could not tell you his name, could not tell you who his people is, could not tell you where he came from, or what he stood for, would you go into business with him? Would you let him in your home? You would call 911. Nah, call the FOI. We come for you. You know, the FOI is back. Call the FOI. Would you allow your daughter to marry that man? Would you allow your, daughter to do such? No. Would you sign your name besides his? You would not. And you wouldn't be wrong for it. But the messenger's teaching us. The messenger's not making an excuse for the world. He is removing our excuse. So when he asks, if we the so-called Negroes do not know our own selves, how can we be accepted by people who have a knowledge of self? Think that over. Hear the words, people, a people. That's a nation's language. A people is a distinct nation with a name, a God, a history, a land, and a future. It is building on purpose. Every nation on the earth walks into the room carrying its own credentials. You see in the United Nations when the Chinaman come in? Just think about me going up there and saying I'm from China. People look at you like you crazy. You ain't from China, wouldn't even believe me. Because I don't have none of those credentials. We are the only ones asking for recognition while wearing another man's name. But we got to get out of those names. This is why education was so important to the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And he did not criticize their schools. He told us exactly what to build in their place. My people should get an education which will benefit their own people and not an education adding to the storehouse of their teacher. Now hear the word, storehouse. Every day our brightest sons and daughters walk into their institutions and pour their gifts into somebody else's storehouse. They graduate at the top of their class and return home with nothing of their own. The messenger says, get the education, but do not let your learning become their inventory. Remember, I always say, my mom used to tell me, get an education because they can never take it from you. I say, I beg to differ. If I get that education and I'm using it to build rockets for SpaceX, Elon Musk got my education. But if I'm getting that education and I'm working for the Nation of Islam, I'm working for my brother, then you got my education. I'd rather you have it than anybody else, no matter how big or small it is. I'd rather you have it. And this is what the messenger was training us up to be and to do. Elijah Muhammad says, it is time for us to learn who we really are. And it is time for us to understand ourselves. That true knowledge is here for you today, whether you accept it or reject it. God has said that we are members of the original people or black nation of the earth. Original means first. Notice the urgency in the messenger's words. He says, it is time. That means this knowledge is not something to be postponed. It is not something to be placed on the shelf for another generation. It is not something to be treated as optional. The time has come for us to learn today who we really are. And notice how the messenger closes that thought. He does not leave us to work out our identity by ourselves. He gives us the answer and he defines it in 3 words. Original means first. Because people don't get it. You see people all the time, they may say, have the knowledge of yourself. You really don't have your knowledge of yourself if you don't have the knowledge of the time. They come hand in hand. Knowledge itself gives you the ability to know the knowledge of the time, meaning when you got the knowledge of yourself, you're working towards the unity of self. You're not in a silo working on your own. You're working to build for your nation. That's what we got mixed up today. I've read all of these books. You're a historian, brother. You haven't built anything. We have to be practical. In our Supreme Wisdom lessons, under student enrollment, the first question asks, who is the original man? And the answer is given by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. The original man is the Asiatic black man, the maker, the owner, the cream of the planet Earth, God of the universe. That's a profound answer. The first question given to the student concerns his identity. Talked about that, gave us our identity. Before the student is asked what occupation he has, what do you do? Because when we meet people, we determine in our mind who they are by their profession. So if I meet a brother, I say, brother, what do you do? I'm a doctor. I'll say, oh, okay, doctor. Brother, what do you do? I'm an Uber driver. Then you look at him different. Or you say, brother, what do you do? Or sister, what do you do? Or I clean houses. You look at them, oh, I'm a lawyer. But the messenger is teaching us to accept identities of what individuals do for the world. So when I see a brother, what do you do for the world, brother? What do you do for your people? Forget about your profession, because your profession is 9 out of 10 contributing to the storehouses of somebody else. I want to know what you're doing for your nation. So the first question given to the student concerns his identity. Before the student is asked what occupation, how much money he earns, or what position he holds, he is asked, who is the original man? Think that over. Because why? The lesson begins there, because all true education begins with the knowledge of origin. And if you don't know where you came from, you will not fully understand your nature. And if you don't understand your nature, you will not recognize your ability. And if you don't recognize your ability, you will not fulfill your responsibility. Think that over. And the messenger teaches us that we're members of the original black nation of earth. He's restoring us back to our identity greater than the condition in which we were found. He is teaching us that slavery is not our beginning. Ignorance was not our natural state. And inferiority was never our divine condition. And he does not ask you to take it on feelings. In this very chapter, he tells you to go check it for yourself. He says, trace over the earth 5,000, 10,000, or 20,000 years ago. Look at history. Who were those people? The messenger asked. They were our people. These times is before the Bible. The Bible is only 6,000 years old. He's telling you to go check back 5, 10, and 20,000 years old. Who was those people? Before Columbus. Before the Bible. So the messenger sends us back past the auction block, past the ship, past the cotton field, to a time when we were not the ruled, but the rulers. That's the key. where the school starts you as slavery. The messenger sends us back past all of that. Look again at the title in the lesson. It says the lesson describes the original man as the what? The cream of the planet Earth. What is the nature of cream? Cream rises to the top. But cream rises when the environment becomes still enough for its true nature to manifest. When everything is constantly shaken, disturbed, and agitated, the cream cannot properly separate and rise. So you got to think about what has been done to us for 400 years. Constant agitation, never allowed to settle. Move from plantation to the sharecropper, from the sharecropper to the city, from the city to the project, from the project to the prison. Every time our people begin to settle and rise, something shakes their container again. This is not an accident. Somebody understands that cream. This teaches us something about the environment we must create for ourselves. Why it's important that we create homes that are peaceful. We create minds that are orderly, and we must develop discipline in our habits. So with that, brothers and sisters, come to a close today. And I want to sincerely thank each of you for being here, for listening, and taking time to study the life-giving teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Our subject has been understand self. And as we have seen, understanding self is not merely knowing our name, our history, or where we come from. Understanding self means knowing our nature, our purpose, our responsibility, and the part we must play in the resurrection and advancement of our people. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches, it is important that my people learn the true knowledge of self as it means their salvation. Therefore, this knowledge is not something light. It is something we should hear and then not forget. It must cause us to examine ourselves and ask, what must I do to help build my nation? What must I do to participate in the life of my people? What gift, talent, skill, discipline, or resource do I possess that can be used for the advancement of others? What kind of person must I become in order to carry my portion of the load? Because when we serve our nation, we're also serving ourselves. We are connected. Remember, the condition of the whole affects every part. And the strength of every part contributes to the strength of the whole. There is a familiar acronym for the word team. Together, everyone achieves more. That principle was demonstrated in the work of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Through the knowledge of self, he was able to build a functioning and thriving nation in the midst of America. He organized men and women. He established schools, business, farms, temples, and institutions. He taught every believer to accept responsibility and to carry a portion of the load. And when a person carries his or her responsibility, the burden becomes lighter for the next person. No one person can build a nation alone. It takes unity. It takes discipline. It takes sacrifice. It takes love. It takes each brother and sister understanding that he or she has a role to play. And the messenger tells us what the knowledge of self does when it takes hold of a people. Gaining the knowledge of self makes us unite into a great unity. So the call tonight is not merely to agree with what you heard. The call is to get behind his teachings and behind the program of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Put your hand to the work. So I thank you again for listening. But I also ask you not to keep this knowledge a secret. Invite others to the class. Share the teachings. Encourage someone else to study the words of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad for themselves. And for those of you in the Delaware Valley, Delaware, Maryland, New Jersey, and the surrounding areas, please reach out. Let us come together and do something for ourselves. Let's build, let's organize, let's study. Let us pool our talents, our resources, our knowledge, and our love for our people. You may also visit www.templeofislam.com. There you can study the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, review the program, find the books, and begin reading and studying divine wisdom for yourself. Follow us and subscribe online so that these classes reach the ones who have not yet heard. Brothers and sisters, this is wisdom from Allah. Do not allow anyone to deceive you out of your divine nature. Do not allow anyone to trick you out of the knowledge of yourself. Many are being deceived today, but you do not have to be one of them. And I want you to hear the messenger himself on this, because he says it sharper than I can. In the theology of the time, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, we pay no more attention to magicians. They can be considered liars, and they can be proven liars if you understand the truth. Why are you so far behind is due to the white man who knew the truth of you. He took it and veiled it, put it in books and into symbolic language so you wouldn't see and understand it until the time. And this is the time that you must know the truth. Regardless to how it hurts you, you must know it. Hear what he said there, because this is the whole subject in one breath. He knew the truth of you. He took it. He veiled it. That is the handicap we spoke about tonight. That is the weight. The knowledge of self was not lost. It was taken and hidden on purpose by people who knew exactly what they had in their hand. And notice the messenger deals with the magician. He does not say that the magician is powerful. He says that the magician can be proved a liar if you understand the truth. A trick only works on a man who does not know how the trick is being done. The moment you have the knowledge, the magic is finished. This is why we no longer place our confidence in magicians, deceivers, or those who profit from keeping us confused. And in the fall of America, he puts the responsibility exactly where it belongs. He says, I do not blame the white man anymore for making fools of our people. It is the nature of the white man to make a fool of our people, but it is not the nature of our people to allow him to make fools of them. Now let's sit with that, brothers and sisters, and let's understand the truth is here. The knowledge is available. The opportunity is before us. And the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad has placed the choice before us. He said in the subject tonight, and he says it again in the fall of America, you must know the truth, whether you accept it or reject it. So let's continue to study. Let's continue to build. Let's continue to grow. And let's become living examples of what the knowledge of self can produce. And again, I thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And I pray that Allah blesses each of you with a better understanding of ourselves, fulfill our responsibilities, and work together for salvation and advancement of our people. And I greet you in the nation greetings of peace and paradise of Assalamu alaikum.